I agreed to let my brother and his pregnant girlfriend move in after they got evicted. I paid all the bills, bought their groceries, even cleared out my office so they'd have a nursery. One morning I came home from a weekend shift to find all my belongings in the garage. "We need more space," he said. "Maybe it's time you get your own place." My name was still on the lease. He just smiled and said, "Good luck proving that in court." "All right. I don't even know where to start, but I'll try to get it all out. My name's Tyler. I'm 36 years old and I live in Tacoma, Washington. I've had this apartment for 6 years. It's nothing fancy, just a basic 2-bedroom with old floors and thin walls, but it's home. I've always kept it clean, quiet, and paid for on time. I don't party. I don't even really date. I work long hours at the hospital doing lab work on the night shift, so I value peace when I'm home. That peace was destroyed the day I let my younger brother Chase and his girlfriend Amber move in. It all started around 8 months ago. I was coming off a double shift when I saw 5 missed calls from Chase. I ignored them at first, but then he texted, "Bro, we're outside. We got kicked out. Can we crash for a bit?" I almost didn't answer the door, but when I opened it, there they were, both of them looking like hell. Amber had puffy red eyes and was visibly pregnant. Chase looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Just for a couple weeks," he said. "We'll get back on our feet." I didn't even think it through. I just said, "Yeah, come in." That was my first mistake. The first week wasn't bad. They stayed in the guest room. I figured it'd be tight with the baby coming soon, so I decided to make space. I cleared out my office, moved all my gear and desk into the garage, and told them they could use that room for the nursery. I didn't even charge them rent. I paid for everything: electric, water, groceries. I figured they were struggling and I could afford it. But that's when things started to change. At first it was small. Chase would leave dishes in the sink and act like they weren't his. Amber started adjusting the thermostat constantly, complaining it was too cold for the baby even though it wasn't born yet. I'd come home from a long night at work and find the TV blasting or the shower running while no one was in it. Then the fridge started emptying faster. My snacks were gone. My energy drinks? Gone. I bought a case of Gatorade one day, it disappeared overnight. When I asked, Amber rolled her eyes and said, "I'm pregnant. I need to stay hydrated." Whatever. I let it go. But then they started acting like I was the guest. I was barely sleeping. I work weekends, 12-hour overnight shifts, and when I'd get home, I'd find Chase sleeping in my bed. My bed. He said the couch hurt his back. I'd try to shower and Amber would be in there for an hour with the door locked. I told Chase I was getting frustrated. He said, "Bro, chill. It's just until the baby comes." I told myself to suck it up. I didn't want to stress a pregnant woman. I didn't want to fight with my brother. Then the mail started coming with both their names on it, even though only I was on the lease. I asked Chase about it and he said, "Well, we live here too now." About 3 months into this nightmare, I worked a full weekend shift. I was dead on my feet. All I wanted to do was sleep. I pulled into the driveway around 8 a.m. Monday morning and noticed something strange. My car wasn't in the usual spot. They'd moved it to the street. Weird. I walked up to the door, turned the handle, and stepped inside. Everything was gone. I mean everything that was mine: my bed, my TV, my gaming console, my clothes, even my toothbrush was gone from the apartment. I walked through the living room. All the furniture had been rearranged. Amber had decorated. There were baby toys and clothes all over. My framed photos had been replaced. My bedroom was set up like a nursery. Crib, rocking chair, pastel colors. My desk was gone. Panic set in. I opened the garage. Everything I owned was there, dumped in piles. My mattress was leaning against the concrete wall. My clothes were stuffed in garbage bags. My computer monitor was covered in a blanket wedged between boxes. That's when Chase came down the steps, coffee in hand. I looked at him and said, "What the hell is this?" He took a sip and said, "We need more space, man. Amber's due soon." I stared at him. "You moved all my stuff into the garage without asking me?" He shrugged. "You're never here anyway. It just makes more sense. Maybe it's time you look for your own place." I couldn't believe it. "I pay for this place. My name is on the lease." He smiled. That smug, punchable smile. Good luck proving that in court. Amber appeared behind him, rubbing her belly like she was proud of it all. It's not healthy for the baby to be in a cramped space. I walked out, drove to a friend's place. My hands were shaking. I couldn't even sleep that day. I knew I'd just been played in my own home, but I also knew something they didn't. I still had control of the lease, and I wasn't about to let this slide. I stayed with my friend Paul for the next couple of nights. I barely ate. I barely slept. I just kept replaying it over and over in my head how smug Chase looked when he said, "Maybe it's time you get your own place." That night, I dug up every piece of paperwork I had on the apartment. The lease agreement, rent receipts, email chains with the landlord, even photos of the apartment with my furniture in it. I made copies. Drove down to the police station and filed a report for illegal eviction and property damage. The officer listened carefully, took my statement, and handed me a case number. Next, I called my landlord. Greg had owned the place since before I moved in. He was a decent guy, maybe mid-50s, old school. I explained everything, how Chase and Amber had moved in temporarily, how I made room for them, how I still paid every bill. I told him about coming home and finding all my stuff shoved in the garage. Greg was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "Chase tried to get you taken off the lease last week. Told me you moved out." My heart dropped. "What did you do?" I asked. I told him I'd need to speak to you directly. I figured something was off. I thanked him hard. I told him I wasn't going anywhere and that I needed to meet in person. We scheduled something for the next day. I met with Greg the next morning. We sat down and looked through the lease. I was still the only one legally listed as a tenant. Chase and Amber were never added officially. That meant they had no legal rights to the apartment. Greg was pissed. He said he'd never allow tenants to be treated that way. We came up with a plan. First, Greg would deliver an official notice of lease violation. Since I was the legal tenant and I hadn't given written consent for subletting, Chase and Amber were essentially squatters. They had 7 days to get out. Second, I filed for a restraining order to keep Chase and Amber from harassing or threatening me further. I wasn't taking any chances. Third, I filed a civil suit for illegal eviction, theft, and damages. The cost of the damaged items alone was nearly $2,000, and I had proof of everything: photos, receipts, and Greg's statement. But I wasn't done. While I was gathering documents, I found something odd in my email. A few job references sent to my old work email. Ones I'd never answered. I opened one and my jaw dropped. Chase had been applying for jobs and listing me as his employer. Not just a reference. He'd made up a fake company name, listed me as a supervisor, and used my email and number to back it up. He even signed my name on a letter saying he worked there for 3 years. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. Forgery. Fraud. We added it to the suit. But here's where things really turned. Paul, the friend I'd been staying with, ran into Amber at a local grocery store. She didn't recognize him. He overheard her talking on the phone. She was laughing, telling someone how they'd flipped the whole place and might just stay for good. She said, "He's a night worker, barely even lived there. We just took it." Paul recorded the whole conversation. He sent it to me. It was all I needed. Greg delivered the notice personally. Said Chase looked confused at first, then pissed. Amber screamed about harassment and discrimination. Chase told Greg, "You'll hear from our lawyer." Greg just handed them the paper and walked away. 2 days later, I showed up with a sheriff and a locksmith. I walked into my apartment. Chase was on the couch watching TV. Amber was eating something straight out of the jar. I didn't say a word. The sheriff told them they had 3 hours to start moving. Chase jumped up, started yelling, "This is bull. He doesn't even live here." The sheriff pointed to the court documents. "He does now." Amber cried. "Chase cussed me out. Said I ruined his life." I didn't answer. I just walked into my room and looked at the damage. My walls were dented. My mattress was ruined. My electronics were scratched. It looked like they'd let a raccoon loose in there. I didn't yell. I didn't even look at them again. I just made a list of everything broken and sent it to my lawyer. But I wasn't finished yet. They left that day, but not before Amber accidentally knocked over my coffee table and spilled something on the carpet. Chase looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You just burned your own bridge, man. Don't come crawling back." I locked the door behind them. I stood there for a few minutes in silence. No more yelling. No more crying. No more TV blasting at 3 a.m. It should have felt good, but instead I felt angry. Like I had just survived a robbery that lasted 4 months. That night, I put everything into motion. About a week after they were kicked out, I started getting strange calls, creditors asking about a Chase Montgomery. When I said I wasn't him, they asked why Chase had used my address. Turns out Chase had been using my apartment address to open credit cards. I didn't even know how many. I ran a soft credit check on myself, just in case. My score was fine, but I looked up Chase's name through a public records service. 5 cards. All maxed out. All linked to addresses that traced back to my place. Some even listed my name as a cosigner. He'd forged that too. I filed a police report and forwarded everything to my lawyer again. We added identity theft to the civil suit. That pushed things into criminal territory. Greg called me one evening, sounding rattled. Said a neighbor had come by with something odd. Apparently, Chase had been running a side hustle out of the garage while I was working overnight shifts, selling cheap car parts and repair services under the table. Greg checked the lease policies, strictly no business operations on the property. He found pictures of strange cars parked in the lot at night, all with mismatched doors or taped bumpers. I asked around. One neighbor said he heard them using power tools at 1 a.m. for weeks. This wasn't just about me anymore. Greg decided to file a claim against Chase for violating the rental agreement and causing property damage. He told me I gave them rope. They built their own noose. Amber posted a long Facebook story a few days later. Someone sent me screenshots. It was full of lies, how I emotionally abused her, kicked her out while she was 8 months pregnant, and made her sleep in the garage. She ended it by linking a new GoFundMe, help a single mother start over. The goal? $10,000. She raised $400 before someone posted court documents in the comments. Then the whole thing fell apart. The page was reported and shut down. The comments turned brutal. Someone even reposted the grocery store recording Paul took. I thought that would be the end of it. But it got worse. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the police. They had issued a warrant for Chase for forgery, identity theft, and fraud. His last known address was mine. The officer asked if I knew where he was. I told him the truth. I hadn't heard from him. But I had a guess. I checked his social media and found a tagged post from some girl in Spanaway. I forwarded it to the officer. A few days later, I got a call. Chase had been arrested during a traffic stop. He had fake insurance cards, fake pay stubs, and a suspended license. He was also driving a car with a mismatched VIN. The officer said, "Your brother's in deep." I couldn't shake the feeling Amber was still up to something. She was too quiet, too slippery. Chase had always been the loud one, the screw-up, but Amber? She was smarter than she let on. That smug look she gave me the day they kicked me out, I knew it wasn't gone. She was planning something. Then I got the letter. It came in a plain white envelope, no return address. Inside was a form from the county. Child support registration. And my name was listed under presumed father. I stared at the paper. I felt cold all over. I called the number on the form and got transferred to someone who explained it. Amber had submitted a request claiming I was the father of her baby. She said I lived with her and provided support, and now she wanted to establish paternity and financial assistance. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I emailed the caseworker a PDF with copies of the court case, eviction, restraining order, and police reports. Then I attached a personal note. This is a lie. I am not and have never been in a relationship with this woman. She is my brother's girlfriend, and they lived in my home without permission. I was illegally evicted by them and have ongoing legal claims against both parties. I demand a paternity test. It was scheduled within the week. Chase, fresh out on bail and looking like he hadn't slept in days, showed up with Amber to the appointment. She looked angry. He looked confused. I kept my mouth shut the whole time. When the results came in, the court sent me a copy. 0% probability. Amber had lied to the court, trying to get me on the hook for child support. Maybe thinking I'd be too scared or too tired to fight it. Maybe she thought I'd rather just pay and be done with it. She was wrong. I handed everything to my lawyer again. They added it to the civil case as an attempt at financial fraud. But I wasn't interested in just money anymore. I wanted to bury them. The civil suit finally reached court about 3 months later. I showed up with my lawyer, my landlord, Paul, and a folder full of documents. Lease, photos, videos, receipts, police reports, and even the fake job reference emails. The judge looked through them all without saying much. Chase and Amber sat across from us looking like ghosts. No lawyer. No notes. Just silence. The judge ruled in my favor. Awarded me $8,450 in damages, including everything I had replaced or repaired. Chase was hit with 3 charges: fraud, forgery, and identity theft. The judge issued a no-contact order against both of them and gave me permanent control of the lease. And then she said something I'll never forget. To the plaintiff, you were patient, generous, and trusting. You were taken advantage of in every possible way. This ruling is not just about property or money. It's about fairness. Justice is served. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just nodded and walked out of that courtroom with my head high. Chase ended up doing 6 months in county jail. He lost everything: his job, his car, his name. Last I heard, he was living out of someone's basement trying to apply for jobs he wasn't qualified for. Good luck getting hired with a felony fraud conviction. Amber had the baby 2 weeks after the court date. She tried to reach out, sent me a message saying we made mistakes, but he's still your nephew. I deleted it without answering. I'm not proud of everything. I ignored red flags. I let family loyalty blind me. I tried to save someone who wasn't interested in being saved. That's on me. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret showing them what happens when you steal from someone who gave you everything. They thought they could use me and throw me out. They forgot I was the one who signed the lease. And in the end, I threw them out. For good.